Ever feel like you're stuck? You know, like in a rut, or like there's just this invisible force holding you back from reaching your full potential. It's like
Mm.
that feeling of always battling uphill constantly, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So today, we're going to be exploring this feeling using this metaphor of a mountain.
Interesting.
And we're diving deep into Brianna Wiest's book, The Mountain is You, to help us unpack this whole idea.
Okay, cool.
You see, Wiest argues that this mountain, this thing that's keeping you from the life you want, it's often built from years of accumulated experiences,
Huh.
little traumas, adaptations, coping mechanisms we all develop that, they may have helped us in the past,
Right.
but now they're holding us back.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like we're building this wall brick by brick.
Mm.
You might not notice it at first, but eventually it becomes this huge structure that's hard to ignore.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how our personal mountains form too, right?
absolutely.
And just like a real mountain, they can feel massive and impossible to overcome. Winnie Stevens says, your mountain is the block between you and the life you want to live.
Whoa.
So what exactly does that look like?
Well, the book emphasizes that these mountains aren't just external challenges. They're also internal roadblocks, too.
Okay.
Things like self-sabotage,
Yeah.
limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
and those pesky patterns, that just keep us stuck.
Oh, yeah.
It's like all these internal forces are colliding within us,
Mm.
creating a landscape that's both challenging
Right.
and, believe it or not, ripe for growth.
So you're saying these internal conflicts, these mountains that we create, they actually have the potential to help us grow.
Absolutely.
That's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine you want to achieve this big, huge goal, but you're also terrified of failing.
Right.
That internal conflict, those are your personal tectonic plates clashing, creating that pressure,
Okay, I'm starting to see how this mountain analogy works.
Good.
So how do we actually start to make sense of our own personal mountain?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, where do we even begin?
Well, Weeds talks about this idea of positive disintegration.
Okay.
I know that sounds a bit strange,
It does a little bit, yeah.
but it's essentially about recognizing that sometimes we need things to fall apart. Yeah, to hit rock bottom for real change to occur.
Interesting.
It's like that caterpillar going through metamorphosis to become a butterfly.
Okay.
It has to break down completely
Right.
before it can transform into something beautiful.
I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, those times when we felt like everything was falling apart.
Yeah.
But looking back, we can see how those experiences ultimately led to some positive change in our lives.
Exactly. It's like that saying,
What's that?
the only way out is through. We often need to go through those difficult, sometimes even painful experiences to come out stronger on the other side.
So if we're thinking about our own lives, those challenges we're facing, how can we start to see those as opportunities for growth rather than just obstacles?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we're going to explore next.
Okay.
We'll delve into how these mountains actually form, what those colliding forces are,
Right.
and how we can start to understand the terrain of our own personal mountain.
I'm excited to hear more about that.
It's fascinating how Oneist compares the formation of our personal mountains to the way mountains form in nature.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all about this immense pressure and these colliding forces.
So we're not just talking about like external pressures,
Right.
but also these internal conflicts
Exactly.
we have within ourselves.
It's recognizing those conflicting needs and desires we all have.
Okay.
Like, for example, we might crave this deep connection with others, but at the same time, push people away.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Or maybe we yearn for change in our lives, but cling to what's familiar out of fear.
It's almost like we're sabotaging ourselves without even realizing it.
Exactly.
These internal battles, these conflicting desires, they create the very terrain of our mountain.
Precisely. And the book dives even deeper. you know.
Okay.
It explains how a lot of these patterns stem from those accumulated tiny traumas we talked about earlier.
Right.
Those adaptations and coping mechanisms we develop to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
They can actually turn into the very things holding us back.
So it's not about blaming ourselves for these patterns.
Oh, not
But rather understanding where they came from and how they're now playing out in our lives.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing those patterns and then asking,
Asking what?
okay, how is this serving me now?
Right.
Is this helping me move towards the life I want, or is it keeping me stuck?
That's a really powerful question to ask ourselves.
It is.
And this brings up something else that really resonated with me from the book.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that facing this mountain, confronting these internal conflicts, is actually the only way to truly grow and become our best selves.
Wiest argues that it's not about conquering the mountain in this aggressive, ego-driven way, but about understanding it.
It's about learning from it and ultimately transforming ourselves through the process. She even writes, "You are here because a trigger showed you to your wound, and your wound will show you to your path, and your path will show you to your destiny."
Wow.
It's like these challenges, these mountains are actually signposts guiding us towards our true purpose.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it really highlights how the mountain itself isn't the enemy. It's the crucible,
Okay.
the challenging experience that helps us forge strength, resilience, and self-awareness.
I see.
It's through navigating those difficult terrains that we discover who we truly are
Yeah.
and what we're capable of becoming.
This all makes sense, but it still feels daunting, right? I
Right.
mean, actually facing those deep-seated patterns, those fears, those insecurities, it's not exactly a walk in the park.
You're absolutely right. It takes a lot of courage and commitment, but remember,
It's that.
you don't have to do it alone.
That's a good point. The book talks about seeking support, right?
It's exactly. We can lean on therapists, coaches, mentors, even trusted friends and family. Those people who can offer guidance, encouragement, and a fresh perspective on our journey.
It's like having a seasoned Sherpa guiding us on our climb,
Yeah.
sharing their wisdom and expertise to help us navigate those treacherous paths.
And that's a great segue into the next part of our conversation,
Great.
where we'll explore some practical steps we can take to start climbing our mountains,
Okay.
how to understand our personal terrain, gather our resources, and begin the journey towards transformation.
Okay, so we've talked about what these mountains represent, these internal challenges we face,
Right.
why it's so important to actually confront them.
Yeah.
But I think what a lot of us are wondering is, how do we actually do that? How do we start climbing this thing?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
And I really appreciate that Wiest doesn't give this, rigid step-by-step guide.
Right.
Because, as we've discussed, the journey's so personal.
Yeah, for sure.
But she does emphasize that self-awareness is absolutely crucial,
Makes sense. Like, before you climb any mountain, you need to understand the terrain.
Exactly. You need to know where those tricky spots are.
Yeah.
What gear you're going to need.
Right.
And in this case, your gear is understanding your triggers.
Okay.
Those things that set off those negative patterns.
Sure. Yeah.
It's about knowing your habitual behaviors.
Yeah.
And most importantly, those deep-seated beliefs that kind of fuel that self-sabotage.
So we're talking about getting really honest with ourselves.
Yes.
Not just about the surface stuff, but the underlying why behind our actions.
Exactly. Think of it like this.
Okay.
Self-awareness is like having a map of your internal landscape.
I like that.
And the more detailed the map, the better you can navigate.
Okay, that makes sense.
But here's the thing. You also need a compass to guide you.
Okay.
And that compass, in this case, is self-compassion.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have immediately connected those two.
Right.
Explain that a little more.
Yeah, sure. So it's easy to get frustrated with ourselves when we slip up,
Mm-hmm.
and fall back into those old patterns,
Yeah, we've all been there.
right? We can be our own harshest critics.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But self-compassion is about treating ourselves with kindness, especially during those tough moments.
Yeah, because none of us are perfect, right?
Exactly. We're all going to stumble on this climb.
Yeah, we're going to fall down. We're going to get back up.
Exactly. And that's where self-compassion comes in.
Right.
It's saying to yourself, okay, I messed up, but that's human. I'm learning. I'm growing.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up on myself.
So it's like having a supportive coach on the sidelines, cheering us on even when we fumble.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And speaking of support, another key aspect this highlights is the importance of challenging those limiting beliefs.
Right, right.
Those negative thoughts that kind of whisper, you're not good enough or you'll never make it.
Oh, those voices can be so loud sometimes.
But here's the secret. They're just echoes from the past. They're not truths about who you are. They're like those little saboteurs trying to keep you small and safe.
So how do we silence those saboteurs?
It takes practice, but you start by recognizing them for what they are, imposters.
Okay.
And then you choose to believe a different story, one of growth, resilience, and possibility.
It's almost like we're rewriting the script we've been telling ourselves.
Exactly. And sometimes that rewriting process, involves setting some healthy boundaries.
Okay.
This could mean saying no more, often distancing yourself from toxic people or situations, or even just limiting your exposure to those triggers that kind of send you spiraling.
It sounds like it's about creating a safe space for yourself, both physically and emotionally.
Absolutely.
Like establishing a base camp where you can rest, recharge, and gather your strength before you continue the climb.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to climb this mountain alone.
Right.
Seeking professional support,
Right.
whether it's therapy, coaching, or mentorship, can make a world of difference.
It's like having that experienced Sherpa we talked about earlier, someone who's been on this path before and can offer some guidance.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of community.
Oh, yeah.
Surround yourself with people who believe in you, who support your growth, and who will cheer you on every step of the way.
So ultimately, facing our mountain is about becoming the hero of our own story.
Absolutely. It's about claiming agency over your life, stepping into your power, and creating the life you truly desire.
It's about recognizing that the journey itself is the reward.
Yes.
The lessons learned, the strength cultivated, the transformation we undergo, that's what stays with us long after we've reached the summit.
We just beautifully sums it up when she writes, "The mountain that stands in front of you is the calling of your life, your purpose for being here, and your path finally made clear."
I get chills hearing that. It's a reminder that those challenges, those mountains aren't random. They're signposts pointing us toward our true north.
Exactly. Yeah. So, dear listener, we invite you to reflect. What is your unique mountain? What challenges are beckoning you toward growth and transformation? Embrace the climb, for it is in the journey that you will discover your greatest strength, your resilience, and ultimately your true self.
Such a powerful message. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the journey doesn't end. Here, we encourage you to pick up Brianna Wiest's book, The Mountain Is You, to further explore these incredible concepts and keep climbing, dear listener. The view from the top is worth every step.